On October the 29th, Jake Paul may finally meet his match when he steps in the ring with UFC legend Anderson the Spider Silva. Before we get into this next video, make sure that y'all hit my like button and sub to the channel if you're not already subscribed to the channel. What's up with it, everybody? Now, finally, on October the 29th, fans that really hate Jake Paul and want to see him out of the sport of boxing, you may finally get your wish, because Jake Paul is stepping in against Anderson the Spider Silva. And I'm going to tell y'all, for those who don't know, this is the biggest, toughest fight for Jake Paul thus far. We know that Jake Paul is 5-0 with his boxing career. He's faced a YouTube star, and he's faced, some MMA fighters, and then he faced former NBA star Nate Robinson. And, he's pretty much knocking out all of these fighters that he's been facing. But the problem is, all these fighters are professional athletes, but none of them are professional boxers. And that's been a problem because people don't respect the competition that Jake Paul is getting in the ring and fighting. But now, Anderson Silva is a whole different story. But a lot of y'all don't have no idea about Anderson Silva and his boxing background. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about Anderson Silva. Because see, the ones who know who Anderson Silva is, y'all know him as the UFC legend that dominated the middleweight division for years and years. Well, in the UFC, Anderson Silva was one of the most feared strikers, maybe the most feared striker in UFC history when it came to throwing hands. Now, Anderson Silva, he has a professional boxing background. He started boxing professionally in 1998. Yeah, way back in 1998, Anderson Silva started boxing professionally. So he's been boxing professionally well over 20 years. He's also had some professional fights, since then. His last professional fight was against Tito Ortiz, and he brutally KO'd Tito Ortiz, right? And I think he KO'd Tito Ortiz in the first round. Now, by no means am I saying knocking out Tito Ortiz was impressive, because of the fact that we all know, if you know Tito Ortiz is a wrestler. He never really had no stand-up game. But before that fight with Tito Ortiz, Anderson Silva, he fought Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., the son of the boxing legend Julio Cesar Chavez. Now, those who know that Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he had a very disappointing professional career. He came out the gate smoking. He was like 44-0, and he was knocking everybody out, and he was supposed to be that next big Mexican superstar. The problem with Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. wasn't skills, wasn't that he didn't have the talent, he just didn't have the discipline. He didn't have the discipline to stay in shape and train. He liked to smoke weed. He liked to party outside of the ring. So he just never panned out to be what his dad was and what everybody else groomed him to be from a little kid. He boxed his whole life, but he did have the skills. Now, Anderson Silva going in at like 47 years old, beating Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. was impressive. Like I said, a man that's boxed his whole life, his dad was a legend, that was impressive. And in that fight, Anderson Silva was able to show and display that he had superb boxing skills. Anderson Silva can really box. He got nice footwork. He got head movement, got fast hands. He can do it all, and he got respectable power. He can do it all. Anderson Silva's boxing skills are on a much higher level than Jake Paul. I've watched both of these, and I'm not a hater of Jake Paul. I respect Jake Paul for what he's doing for the sport of boxing and for his state, Ohio. You feel me? Jake Paul is doing a lot of great things, so I don't understand where all the hate comes for Jake Paul, because he's actually helping out boxing. And one thing about Jake Paul is he takes the craft of boxing very serious. Yeah, he talks a lot of shit to sell these fights, and he understands what he has to do to promote himself. But the fans are not giving him no respect because they want him to fight a real boxer. Now, Anderson Silva is a real boxer. Yeah, he's older now, but he has high skills and he trains constantly in boxing. Anderson Silva is essentially what we want to see him in the ring against, because Anderson Silva is a whole lot better than a lot of these low tier fighters. Y'all gotta understand, when your favorite fighter is 5-0, he's not fighting high level competition. And Anderson Silva is well above the level of competition that your favorite fighter is fighting at 5-0. So this is a very, very dangerous opponent for Jake Paul, for those who don't understand the background and the history of Anderson Silva. Silva is now the favorite to beat Jake Paul in the betting odds. Jake Paul came out the favorite, but these bookies know that Anderson Silva is a real problem. And the thing is, Showtime has a lot of money invested in Jake Paul. So a lot of people, when this fight gets announced, right, to the world, a lot of people are gonna come out and say, oh, well, Anderson Silva, he's gonna lay down. He gonna take the money. You know, Jake Paul has already won, whatever. But nah, I'm telling y'all, Anderson Silva don't have it in his blood to go and lay down for Jake Paul. This gonna be a real fight for Jake Paul. So if Jake Paul loses this fight, I don't know what Showtime is gonna do, because Showtime got a lot of money invested in this fight. And Anderson Silva has the skills and the power to knock out Jake Paul. Now, when it comes to Jake Paul's chin, I don't know. I don't know how his chin is. I don't know if his chin can hold up if he gets hit, flush and hard by Anderson Silva. But one thing I do know is Anderson Silva has the speed and the skills to catch Jake Paul at any given moment. And Anderson Silva has a chin. He has good defense. He knows how to parry shots. He knows how to weave under shots. So Anderson Silva, he got all the skills. He's just older. That's the only, downside for those who want to see Jake Paul get knocked out. But like I said, if I put my money on this fight, I'm going with Anderson Silva. I know the background of Anderson Silva. I've watched Anderson Silva fight in real professional boxing matches. And this is a very dangerous fight for Jake Paul. This is what the fans have been asking for. Even those who don't know who Anderson Silva is and that's gonna shit on this fight when it's announced, this is what you want to see. This is the fight that y'all been asking for. We know for years and years, Anderson Silva and Roy Jones were supposed to fight each other. Now, for Roy Jones to entertain Anderson Silva lets you know right there that Anderson Silva can throw them hands. You know what I'm saying? Anderson Silva is just not another MMA fighter just trying to step in the ring. No, Anderson Silva has a boxing background and he has a kickboxing background. So yeah, this the real deal Holyfield for Jake Paul. So Jake Paul better be ready, because to me, this fight is tougher than Jake Paul going in against Hasim Rahman. I was never impressed with Hasim Rahman. Hasim Rahman is a heavyweight, but he's very, very slow. He don't have a lot of power. And he was coming in at a disadvantage, having to cut a whole shit ton of weight. Anderson Silva don't got to do all of that. Anderson Silva already fights around that same weight. And yeah, it's going to be an even matchup as far as weight and everything, but it's not going to be even as far as the skill set and the experience, because Anderson Silva has over 20-something years of experience of boxing, and Jake Paul only got about 2 or 3. Yeah, so I like this fight. I think this is going to do big numbers, because Anderson Silva is a worldwide superstar. He has almost 5 million followers on Instagram. Jake Paul got probably 20-30 something million followers, and this fight is going to do big numbers, because Anderson Silva is still known worldwide because of what he did in the UFC, reigning middleweight champion for years and years and dominating the UFC and being the biggest name in the UFC for years upon years. So let me know what y'all think about this fight. Make sure that y'all hit my like button. I appreciate everybody. Comment in the comment section. There you go, talking that boxing again, and I'm gone.